visit in person. We have a 9 and a 10:30 service that you can choose from. If you live out of state or out of the city, we'd love you to drop in the comments where you're watching from today, but we're so glad that you could join us. At Hope Church, one of our core values is that we are generous. If you're prepared to be generous today with your tithes and offerings, we want to let you know of 2 ways you can do that. You can give online at hopewintergarden.com, or you can text an amount to 84321. Thank you so much for being obedient to whatever it is that God asked you to do. We hope you're encouraged by today's message online. Take a minute, grab some coffee, get comfortable, and get ready for our message today.
Good morning. Hey, can we just thank God for the worship in this house today? Man, those guys were getting it this morning. Man, I'm so thankful for these guys. They're such a talented group. I was on the front row going, these guys are really good at what they do. And I'm just so thankful for them. Hey, we're glad you're here today. And we're very, very, very thankful that we get to dedicate some babies. Dinah mentioned to you guys, groups are going. And there's already 165 people signed up for groups already. So I want to encourage you, don't miss out. Some of them are full. 3 of us, they're clapping. We're all in the groups. And I'm really excited. We are Diane and I are late to the game. Our group hasn't even started yet. And we just had a crazy schedule, so we haven't really got it kicked off yet. But we do got people in our group, and we're really excited about what God is going to do. I'm kind of jealous when I see all the pictures of people's groups starting. I'm like, dang, we got to get ours going, but we start soon. And there's a few more spots in some of the groups. I walked in today, and one of our dream teamers said, "You're right. Community is important. It is a big deal." And she's like, freedom, she jumped in the freedom group, and freedom group is just fire. It just really is cool. And so I'm just excited about what God is going to do in our group season. If you're dedicating your babies today and your friends or family of the people that are dedicating babies, we're really, really glad you're here today. And we're just thankful. Pastor Armando's in-laws are in the house, and his parents are in the house today. And 3 of us are excited that y'all are here. No one's clapping today. No one's clapping today. I need to take out all the parts in the message, Chris, where I wanted people to clap and just nix through those. They're not clapping today. we're glad that you're here today. If you haven't been in a while, I saw some new faces or some faces I haven't seen in a while. We're really, really glad you're here today. Somebody was asking me about church recently, and like, what's your favorite part about church? And one of my favorite things about church is that there are a lot of people that have come to Hope Church, and for whatever reason, God has taken them in a different direction. And I'm always sad to see people leave. But one of the things I get really, really excited about, because now we've been here for so long, is that when people come back to Hope. And I'm just so thankful. I saw some faces. I'm like, man, we would be such a better church if they were here every week. And so I'm just glad to see some of the faces that I haven't seen in a while. And so if your face is old or young, I'm glad it's in the room. I'm glad it's in the room. And so, we've been in a series called For Everyone. And I've been using, I used 2 chairs last week, and so there's 2 chairs again this week. And this one's a little bit higher. But last week we talked about serving, and we believe that serving is for everyone. And so if you're not serving, there's an invitation for you to be a part of what God is doing here at this church. Dinah mentioned just a moment ago, but join Next Steps. It's next week. It's during our second hour. And we'd love for you to be a part of the dream team. And then also, I gave you guys an email address last week. It was serve@hopeintergarden.com. That was for all the people that have already been through Dream Team or have already been through Next Steps, but they haven't been serving. I just believe that where we're going, we need everybody. Where we're going, we really need everyone. And it just, many hands make for light work. And so it's an invitation for you to be a part of what God is writing here in our city. And I believe that He's writing something unique. The Bible in John chapter 8, there's a story. This is the gospel. Jesus is writing the story for us to get something out of it. And this is like a very, very story it's a very familiar story. It has a very, very negative title. If you're using a Life Application Bible, there's a very, very negative title in the story. And I'm not even going to give you the title. If you have a New Living Application Bible or a Study Bible, you know what the title is there. But it's just a very, very negative title. But there's so much truth that can come out of this. There's so much to gain, so much to learn out of this one story. This is one of those stories where if you've heard the story preached before, you've walked away going, dang, that's just a paramount. I think what this story has today in John chapter 8, it's what our church needs. It's for everyone in the room, no matter what side of the coin that you find yourself in on this story, it's for everyone in the room. John chapter 8, verse 1, Jesus returned to the Mount of Olives, but early the next morning he was back again at the temple. A crowd soon gathered, and he sat down and he taught them. And every time there's a crowd, something's about to happen in the scriptures. If a crowd, Jesus is like, captive audience, let's go. Like, we can do this. It's anywhere. Like, if you are at a concert would not be a concert if there wasn't a crowd. Come on, somebody. Here's another time a crowd begins to form. If somebody going northbound and people are going southbound, if there's an accident on northbound, a crowd begins to happen on the southbound. Come on, somebody. It's called rubbernecking. Everyone wants to see. And a crowd begins to gather. But when there's a crowd, if you see in Scripture, Jesus does a lot of good work in the crowd, but he also does a lot of good work one-on-one. But a crowd begins to gather, and people are leaning in. And so Jesus is like, I'm gonna take advantage of my opportunity to preach to a crowd. While I do good work one-on-one, but there's a crowd. Let me see if I can multiply and magnify my reach right here in this story. And he says here, as he was speaking, the teachers of religious law and the Pharisees, they brought a woman who'd been caught in the act of adultery. And they put her in front of the crowd. So now you have a crowd, you have Jesus, he's gonna teach the people, and then the preachers show up. Everybody say, we don't like preachers. No, I'm kidding, don't say that. Like the people that are supposed to teach the scriptures, they roll up. And they're on the scene. And then a sinner rolls up. Someone who'd been caught in the act of sinning. And she rolls up. And in this story, you probably will find yourself, you've been a sinner, but you've also been a finger pointer. Come on. You know who you are. You know that saying, if you point one finger, there's 3 pointing back at you? And I'll be honest, I can be honest with you today, and I'm honest every Sunday. I hate when preaching. I'm going to be honest with you because the rest of it was a lie. But for me, I have found myself, most of my Christian walk, I have found myself as a finger pointer. When we launched this church, God was like, you're not going to be able to point fingers at people. If you're going to reach the crowds, you're not going to be able to point your finger at people like you've done for so much of your faith walk? And I'm like, God, who's asking you? I found myself as a finger pointer. And so you cannot be a part of the church. You cannot know a lot. You cannot know a lot about the Bible, but these religious law teachers, these communicators, these Pharisees, they're professional finger pointers. They don't just know the 10 Commandments. They know all 600 of the laws. They know the addendum. They know the point ones, the point twos, the point 3 CA. Like, they know all the different levels of all of the rules to follow. And so they're there. Jesus is there. He's teaching. There's a crowd there, and this woman's there, okay? Now, this is what I call a tension point, because everyone's going, what's about to happen? Have you ever been there before where you're like, dude, what's about to happen? I was at a ball game this week, and this dad was yelling, and the mom next to me goes, hey, calm down. I love those kind of moms. Yo, chill. She's like, yo, chill out. She leaned to me, and she's like, I'm just kind of sick of these parents in sports. I'm like, come on, anybody sick of the parents in sports? You know, like, if you're not raising your hand, you're the problem. It's you. I'm talking about you. You know, the parent. My son had a game this week, and I had a thought. I had some thoughts along the way. I'm not the coach. They don't need me to be a coach. One of the kids got hurt. One of the kids got hurt in the ball game. They rushed him to the emergency room. We were in Lakeland, and I was at Trip. I'm like, you know what we ought to do? The game was over. I'm like, we got to go pray for that kid. Let's just roll up at the ER and just pray for that kid. So this family, they don't go to our church. They had visited a couple times, and I was like, let's just go visit them. One of the parents, probably one of the problems, like, I heard they're going to Lakeland, da-da-da. So I'm like, let me get these people. So I find their number. I'm like, where are you guys at? Like, well, let's just go pray for these kids. We walk in there, the kid's broken his arm, and, you know, I'm like, can we just pray for you? Just laid hands on that little boy and just pray. Like, you can't be if you're part of the problem, it's going to also be part of the prayer squad if you're also part of the problem. You know what I'm saying? Like, just be quiet and, like, just pray for the people, you know? Like, just be there. So I'm like, if we're out there yelling, what would that look like if we're communicating? Those parents are watching, like, hey, we want to pray for you. Like, were you also the parent that was yelling at the coach about 8 minutes ago, 15 minutes ago? Like, you're either part of the problem or you're part of the solution. And so they're there, and they're normal. The tension is thick in the room. I actually was telling my friend this week, I met a brand new guy this week. I was at a conference with a Convoy of Hope, and they were telling us about what God is doing in the ministry. And the guy's like, I was telling the guy we're having baby dedication. He's like, you're preaching on the woman caught in adultery on the baby dedication day? That's tense, right? You feel that. And I said, I'm just preaching the gospel every Sunday at my church. I don't care what holiday it is. Like, I'm preaching Jesus and the resurrection, whether it's Easter, Christmas, or baby dedication, grace, full on. Like, I just want to preach what I'm preaching. And so this is a tense moment, like it is in the room in here today. It could be in the room. Verse 4 says, teacher, they said to Jesus, this woman was caught in the act of adultery. The law of Moses says to stone her. What do you say? What do you think, Jesus? Some of you guys, you like me because you don't have to ask me what I think. I'm going to tell you what I think. And some of you, I like you more because I don't have to ask you what you think. You're just going to say it. You're just going to say what you're thinking. I told you guys last week, we grew up in a generation, I grew up in a generation where it's do as I say, not as I do. This generation, they just shoot me straight. You like that phrase? Just shoot me straight. Jesus is like, hey, what do you guys, what does the law of Moses says? Jesus, what do you think? Now, if the Pharisees know all the rules, you know, usually Jesus knows all the rules. Man, he gives these guys the 10 Commandments, and they've built it out to 630-something laws. You can't even remember all of them. We know what Moses says, Jesus, but what do you say? Verse 6, they were trying to trap him into saying something that they could use against him, but Jesus stooped down, and he wrote in the dust with his finger. And a lot of people, a guy asked me this week, he's like, what do you think he wrote? It's irrelevant to what I think he wrote. I think he might have wrote. Well, it doesn't really matter. The point is he wrote something, and I don't care if you're a scholar. No, unless you were there, it's irrelevant. The Bible actually tells us if we knew everything about God, like there's some mysteries that we're not going to know until we get to heaven. And that's what I like about God. If we knew everything, then he would fit in our box. And who wants to serve a God who fits in a box? He holds the whole world in his hands. I love those words, that song. If he clothes the lilies and the flowers, if he takes care of the flowers, don't you think how much more important are we? I mean, that's pretty powerful. Like, if he's worried about, I told one of my friends, I like the beach. We were in Denver. I like the beach because Jesus in heaven is going high tide, low tide, high tide, low tide. That's where we got hymns from. Like, he's like, high tide, low tide. He's orchestrating all this. When the roses go bloom, God's going bloom. I mean, he spoke creation. It came out of his mouth. And so that's the God we serve. That's what I love. If he was in a box, we wouldn't gather the way we gathered. So he says they were trying to trap him. They're trying to trap him. I made this joke a long time ago, but like Jesus knew about trap before trap ever was a thing. You know what I'm saying? Like Jesus knew. Like, nah, guys. Like, come on, seriously? He's let me take you guys to art class. He gets on his hands and knees and he writes in the dirt. I think, I know the person who knows what he wrote was the woman caught in adultery. She could faintly see through the tears in her eyes, the embarrassment, the shame. Come on, this is for someone in the room today. If you've ever struggled with guilt, this lady felt guilt and shame, embarrassment. I mean, we've all done things that we wish nobody would ever know that we did. Everyone knows what she did. Come on, can you feel that? I mean, that's a terrible thought. Yeah, I mean, that's a terrible thought. What she did, everyone saw what she had done. Verse 7, so they kept asking him. They kept on demanding an answer. So he stood up again and he said, hey guys, all right, that's you guys know the answer, but here's my answer. All right, so he stood up again and he said, all right, but let the one who has never sinned throw the first stone. I used to be so good at throwing stones, church. Before God delivered me, we could have called this throwing stones church, because I was just so good at it, leaving just a wake of damage, just taking people out left and right, because I didn't know what I didn't know. I grew up in a religious environment, all the rules, serving. I was serving last week. I was a great server. I just serve. I knew all. I did everything in the Bible that you were supposed to do, not because I love Jesus, but because it was a rule. And I was raised to follow all the rules. And if you go with all the rules, it's hard for you to give grace to people following the rules. And social media didn't help. Like, man, look at those sinners. I got 3 fingers pointed back. Man, look at all those sinners. I'm just like the religious leaders. I'm going, man, there's this lady. Here's this heathen. Here she is. And he says here, they kept on, what's the answer? So the rule is to stone her. And all right, Jesus says, let's let the party begin. Let the one who's never sinned throw the first stone. Then he stooped down again and he wrote in the dust. He writes there twice. Verse 9. When the accusers heard this, they slipped away one. Only Jesus was left in the middle of the crowd with the woman. Then Jesus stood up again and he said to the woman, where are your accusers? Didn't even one of them condemn you? The ones, he's like, okay, you want to stone them? Let's stone them. You guys go first. And it says the oldest walked, the stones began to fall and hit the ground. Now you imagine, like, that lady loved to hear the sound of those rocks hitting the ground. They're just like, yeah, and from the oldest to the youngest, because the older I got, the older we get, we realize we're actually more like the lady in sin than we are the religious ruler. That's for someone in here today that used to track me. I'm not the religious ruler. I'm more like the lady caught in adultery, needing the grace of God at the highest level possible, the highest level. And they're walking away, and she's like, I cannot believe I'm not dying today. I'm sure she's still crying. The shame seems like it's lifting a little bit. And now at this point, Jesus hasn't talked to her. But now he says to her, hey, sweetheart, hey, dear, where are your accusers at? There's not even one accuser. And he's talking to her, but now she's talking to him. Like, and that's terrifying. I have one of my kids, he doesn't like to pray. And I think he's like, God's big. I ain't talking to the creator of the universe. I think that kid's like, I'm not gonna, like, because like, what do you say, right? If you meet the president of the United States of America, you're like, oh shoot. If you meet like Michael Jordan, like name whoever it is, if you saw your favorite player, like what do you say? And Jesus asked you a question, but here's what you do got to do. You got to answer a question if Jesus asks you a question. Sometimes Diana asks you questions and I'm like, I'm not answering that. That's rhetorical. I know a setup when I see it. And she's like, no, Lord, just crying, barely can get the words out. No, Lord. And Jesus said to her, neither do I. Go and sin no more. Just we're good. Like the finger pointers, they're good, and you're good. And here's what he says in this passage of scripture. Like if you were like to get it all in this, if you were to tie it up and put it in a bow, if you were to ask the question what was written in the words on the sand, what Jesus is communicating to both groups, the religious leaders and to the lady caught in adultery, that grace is for everyone. Like it's for everyone. I'm glad my dad's here today. I'm glad my dad's here every Sunday. Someone said to me yesterday, do you have it fully fathomed how proud of you that your dad is? And I'm like, honestly, when I first, like, you know, there's like every parent is proud of their father. But if there was a proud of your children competition, my dad is in the running. My dad gets more video footage than Nicole does. Whitney, I was telling someone this yesterday, Whitney, who goes to our church, who I've been in community groups with, and listen, I'm not telling you guys to get in a community group because you should get in a community group, and me going, I know some pastors like, you guys, church, let's get in community groups, and they're not even in a community group. I've been in community with Whitney for 7 years of this church, and she's like, dude, your dad, like she's helped me be a better son because of her. I'm so thankful for that. And like, I have learned, like, you parents, the older you get, you realize, like, you got to give grace. It's weird. Like, at some point, you have to give grace to your parents. I've had to give my dad some grace. And I'm sure that the times when it felt like he killed me, but he didn't kill me, maybe he did give me grace, and I didn't know that he gave me grace. I remember when my dad said, hey, I got your pocket call. He called me when he was like, I got your pocket call last night. I had no idea you snuck out of the house and toilet papered all those houses. We toilet papered the worship leader. We toilet papered the worship leader's house. We toilet papered one of the teachers' houses. We just went on a rampage. Christian school kids, ladies. I was talking to these moms. Like, you got to keep an eye on these Christian school kids. I'm like, I was one of them. You got to keep an eye on them. We toilet papered so many houses that night. We did it with the principal's. We did it with the principal's grandson. All night long. And then I stayed night. My dad's like, you got to be at the ball field at 9 a.m. And I was there at 9 a.m. And he didn't know this, but at 9 a.m. he had a ball game. And then right after that ball game, they wanted me to stay around and they wanted me to umpire the next game. And you guys, between innings, I would sit on the bench. I was sleeping because we've been up all night long toilet papering. Well, eventually this is for some kid in the room, eventually, or some adult, your sins will find you out. And he finally found out. But he only had part of the story. But I pocket called when I got the college 3 or 4 years ago, and I told Austin and my friends the whole entire story. And my dad there's been so many times where I've called my dad and he hasn't answered his phone, but for some reason he answered the phone today, and he had enough time, to listen to my whole entire 30-minute rant about how cool I was for sticking out of the house all the times. And I'm like, and he gave me grace. He gave me grace. He also gave me grace. When Diana and I were dating, Diana went on a mission trip to Africa. Chris, I was in love. I just called her. I just dialed +1 and I dialed all the numbers. I didn't know you had to do like a long distance calling card back in some of these kids have no idea what I'm talking about. Only the old people know what I'm talking about. I just picked up and dialed Africa. He calls you one day, he's like, hey, you owe me. Back then it was Nextel, chirp, chirp, from Missouri. He's like, you owe me $480. I'm like, I talked to her for 20 minutes. And I just want to hear today to say that it was worth it. Look, I'm married 18 years later. Come on. That's for some kid here today who really likes a girl. Just make the phone call. That's all I'm saying. Make the call. Hey, grace is for everyone. Jesus goes, hey, it's for you, religious leaders who are throwing stones. And it's also for you, woman, who deserve to be stoned. It's for the jacked up sinner in the room, and it's for the judgmental sinner in the room. I'm so thankful that I've learned grace. Someone said to me one time, you need to give grace because one day you're gonna need it. And it changed my life. I've been in some situations. I thought about telling you all my situations where I had to give grace, and I did not want to, but I had to. I want to give you 2 quick things, and we're gonna sing, and we're gonna dedicate some babies. I'm gonna do all this in 1 minute, Diana. Are you ready? You need to give grace to other people. There's someone in your life that you need to give grace to. Now, grace, by the way, it comes with boundaries. They may not be right next to you. Maybe you need to give them grace, but maybe they'll be sitting on the front row. Maybe they'll be in the second hour. It's gonna come with boundaries. Because if you've been hurt before, there's so much talk about being hurt, because it's a normal thing, because hurt people. But when you have grace, you give them grace, but you also, when you give them grace, but you also have to put boundaries, because you don't want to be hurt again by them, but you are gonna have to open up to other people. Out of 8 years, a lot of people left this church, and every time someone leaves, it hurts. You lose a little bit more emotion. I lose a little bit more emotional bandwidth every time it happens. But you know what? It's not gonna stop me from loving the next person that comes in, because I'm gonna give that person grace, and for whatever reason, usually now I'm starting to pray they come back. You gotta give grace to other people. Some of you guys have a hard time doing that because you haven't given grace to yourself. Number 2, you need to give grace to yourself. You're the person. Some of you guys, I'm so mad at you because you beat yourself up so bad. You don't have to do that no more. You don't have to. If Jesus isn't beating us up, I don't know why we would do that. I'm hard on myself. You can be hard on yourself. Be hard on yourself. But quit. You might have made a mistake, but you're not a mistake. The creator of the universe died on the cross for your sins. You need to give grace to yourself. Give yourself some grace. Like my dad would say, dude, chill out. Some of y'all need to chill out with yourself. Give yourself grace. You made a mistake. You made a one-time mistake. Maybe you made it twice. Don't make it a third time. Give yourself grace. You need to give grace to other people. You need to give grace to yourself. And then here's the third thing. You're never going to be able to do all that unless you receive the grace of God. You need the grace of God in your life. Jesus says in 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 9, my grace is all that you need. Wow. Because I thought I needed more money. I thought I needed to lose more weight. I thought I needed to be married. I thought I needed a relationship. I thought I needed, you fill in the blank. I thought I needed to be loved more. I thought I needed to be cared by more people. I thought I needed to serve more. I thought I needed to give more. And those are all things that you need to do. But Bible says that your grace, Jesus says, my grace is all that you need. And when you get that, everything changes. Everything changes in your life. Give grace to somebody today, church. Give grace to somebody. Give grace to yourself. And whatever you do, you need to make sure that you've received the grace of God, because it is hard to give something you have not received. So what about you stand to your feet all across the way? Would you bow your head or would you close your eyes for just a moment? Some of you guys are in here today and you need to give somebody grace. And here's the deal. They hurt you and it really happened, and I get that. Where you're at in your seat, you can give someone grace without talking to them, by the way. I know we don't have a lot of time, but you just need to let someone off the hook today in your heart. Because you don't let them off in your heart, you won't let them off. I was talking with a guy yesterday. He hasn't talked to his family, his mom and his siblings. He hadn't talked to them in 11 years. He's like, I've forgiven him, but just for whatever reason, it just hasn't. Right or wrong, I don't know in the situation. I know for me, I'm gonna give. You can give grace and not be in the same room with the person. It starts in your heart. It starts in your heart. I'm gonna give them grace. You just need to give them grace. I don't know what your mom did to you, I don't know what your dad did to you, but you can give them grace. Maybe for you, you need to give yourself grace. Wherever you're at, you say, I mean, I've screwed up, but I'm not gonna beat myself up no more. I'm delivered, I'm free. Today, someone needs to mark down in the sand today, September the 10th, you're free. No longer are you gonna keep on holding something against you that you did in the past. You're gonna press toward the mark like the Apostle Paul told you to. You're gonna give yourself grace. There's some of you need to receive the grace of God. I'm asking you today, do you know that if you died today, do you have a relationship with Jesus? You need to accept the grace of God. So right where you're at, you need to accept the grace of God. Heads bowed, eyes closed. Would you just say, Jesus, I need the grace of God in my life. I need you to save me from all of my sins, Jesus. I need you to make me new, Jesus. I confess my sins. I believe in my heart that you died and you rose again. I believe that, Jesus. Would you come into my heart and would you save me? Lord, would salvation come into my heart? Just ask him for that. Ask him for salvation today. You need salvation in order to give grace. Lord, we love you. We're so thankful for the salvation that's in the house. For the one here today who needs to give grace to somebody, I pray that they would give grace to somebody. For the one here that needs to give grace to themselves today, I pray that they would do that. Lord, for the one here that's saying, I need Jesus just to give me grace in this season. I pray you would help them to seize and to sense and to step into that season of grace. In Jesus' name we pray.
Thank you so much for joining us today for Hope Church Online. We hope that you take what God has given you today and that you apply it and that your week is better because of time spent with Him. If you have anything we can pray for you about, we'd love for you to email us your prayer request to info@hopewintergarden.com. And again, thank you for joining us online. We hope you have a great week.